Hi everyone, I'm just going to go through instructions for Friday's assignment. So we are working on the document called Lesson 1, Generating Questions. And the goal of this assignment is to come up with as many questions as we can about the phenomenon, with how Tom got melanoma. So what the directions say here is write down as many questions as you can that will help you figure out more about what you want to know about the anchoring phenomenon, which is how Tom got melanoma. Some sentence stems are provided here in the boxes. And these are the things you're going to follow as you ask your questions. So you want to ask as many questions as you can. Do not stop to discuss, judge, or answer any of the questions. So we're not answering them yet. We're just coming up with the questions. We're going to answer them throughout the whole unit. Write down every question exactly as it comes to mind. I'm going to change the phrasing here. Change any statement into a question. And as you think of the question, just write it into the boxes. So this first part is really just brainstorming. You're just thinking as fast as you can and dumping those thoughts into the question boxes. So you're filling in this column for that first question, and you should try and fill in a question for every single box. You're going to come up with as many questions as you can. You may even need more boxes. So you'll set a timer, and as that timer is going, you'll ask your questions. Until the timer goes off, you'll be asking questions. So let's start. Let's say I turn my timer on, and the first thing I think about when I think about the phenomenon is those pictures of moles that we saw. And one of the observations a lot of us had was that the moles appeared to be spreading out, the cancerous ones. So that's a question I have. Why does it seem like I'll say cancerous moles spreading out? And then my timer's still going. I'm not going to answer it yet. I'm still just asking questions. What else do I wonder? So then maybe I wonder, some of us said the sun might cause cancer. I might wonder, does the sun cause cancer? I noticed also in the moles that they were darker. So I might ask, why do the cancerous moles cells appear darker? And then until my timer runs out, I'm still just adding questions. I'm going to give you these 3 to start thinking about it, but you should keep going from here and add more questions. You don't have to use these ones. These are just examples. After I've finished, my timer's gone off and I've asked all of those questions, then I'm going to classify them. I'm going to decide which ones are scientific and which ones are non-scientific. Even if all your questions at this point are non-scientific, that's okay, because you weren't instructed to ask scientific questions. You were just instructed to ask questions. So it's okay if your questions are not scientific yet. So you're not going back and changing them. That's the last step. First, you have your questions, now you're classifying them. So look at your questions and ask these questions. Can they be tested? So could you design an experiment about this to test to test the answer to your question? Do they rely on evidence? Do they involve a cause and effect relationship? So is there something you're trying to test if it affects something else? Do they help you to understand how or why something occurred? Do they involve a pattern, measurement, or observation of the phenomenon? Do they compare 2 things? And can they lead to a hypothesis that is falsifiable? So a good example of a scientific question is when we think back, and we were doing the example with plant height. So a good scientific question would be, does being close to the sun increase how fast a plant will grow tall? So that was something we can easily imagine. What is the experiment about this? A non-scientific question would be, why do plants grow taller? Right? So I can see how those 2 questions are related. The first one is scientific, the second one is not. Because that one can be answered on an opinion, or I can look it up. So if it can be something that's just looked up on Google or in an encyclopedia, then that's not a testable question. So that would be non-scientific. So let's classify the ones I asked. So of these 3, let's decide if they're scientific or non-scientific. So again, once you have all your questions, you're going to go through this whole column, and for every question, decide if it's scientific or not. So why does it seem like the cancerous moles are spreading out? Is that scientific? Well, can I test that? Why does it seem like the cancerous moles are spreading out? I don't think I can create a test around that. Is there a cause and effect relationship between any two things here? I can imagine what one would be, something between the moles and the spreading, right? But it's not inherent to my question. It's not part of my question. So I'm going to say no. This is not a scientific question. It's a good question, but it's not scientific. Does the sun cause cancer? Can that be tested? Probably. I can say, look at people who've been in the sun and people who haven't and see how many have cancer. That would be evidence that the answer relies on. There's a cause and effect relationship between the sun and the cancer. Does it help me understand the pattern? It does. It helps me understand how people are getting cancer. Does it compare two things? It does. It compares cancer and the sun. And can it lead to a falsifiable hypothesis? Sure. The sun causes cancer. Could be a hypothesis that could be falsified. So this is a scientific question. It's not a very detailed scientific question. I could come up with better ways to write that scientific question, but it is scientific. And then my last question was, why do the cancerous mole cells appear darker? So again, is this something I can test? Does it rely on evidence? Does it involve a cause-effect relationship? I don't see any of that here. I see another why question. And again, it's a good question, but it's not scientific. So once you do that for all your questions, then you'll take at least one of your non-scientific questions and you'll revise it. You'll change it to be more scientific. So I'm going to pick any one of the questions I wrote no to, and then in this column, I'll revise it. So I only have to do this once. So I only have two to pick from. I'm going to choose this one, and I'm going to make it more scientific. Why does it seem like the cancerous moles are spreading out? So I need to rephrase this so that it can be tested. How can I rephrase this so it can be tested? Well, I might come up with a hypothesis that I can then test. I might say, okay, well, what I'm wondering really is what's happening to the cells. Are the cells spreading out? So maybe I want to include a relationship. So maybe cancer and whether the cells are spreading out. So let me try, I'll make a first attempt. I may rewrite it. So maybe I could say something like, are cancerous cells spreading more than healthy cells? So I think that would be a good start to a scientific question. I can picture what the experiment would be. I can see something where I'm looking at cancer cells, I'm looking at healthy cells, I'm looking at how they're spreading. I can still improve this more. So when I say more, what do I mean? Are they spreading faster? Are they multiplying faster? What does that actually mean, right? So maybe I want to be more specific here. Are the cancerous cells, let's say, multiplying faster? That's a little more scientific and specific than healthy cells. And now I like that. I think that's a good scientific question. I can imagine a test. I see the relationship. It's between cancer and how fast the cells are multiplying. What else do I need to make sure it's scientific? Does it help me understand something? It does. Do I have a cause and effect relationship? Cancer, the rate of spreading. Is it comparative? Sure, it compares healthy cells and cancerous cells. And can it lead to a testable hypothesis? My hypothesis could be healthy cells spread less quickly than cancerous cells. So I see the hypothesis there. So now I've taken this non-scientific question and I've turned it into a scientific question. You still have to write your own. The one I edited here cannot be your only question revision. You can include this as one of your questions, but you also have to do your own question revision on your sheet. All right, so that was number 3. And then last, prioritize your questions by selecting the 3 questions that you think would be the most important to figuring out more about our anchoring phenomenon. And mark these with an X on your handout and record them on, you don't have to put them on stickies. I'll take this out. I'll just have you put an X on your handout. Be prepared to share these questions with the class, and that'll be what we're doing on Monday. All right, so I would go in here and I only have 3 questions. You'll have more. So I could say this one, I'm putting an X. And this one I'm putting an X, and this one I'm putting an X. You could also highlight them. That might be easier for you to see. So I could also just go in and highlight those 3 questions. My screen's a little too small to see the highlighter. There it is. So I could highlight those 2, either way. All right, so that's what you're going to be doing on this sheet on Friday. And like I said, you'll be sharing those 3 questions first thing on Monday. All right, I'm here if you have any questions. Bye, guys.